Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the April 16th, 2021 monthly board meeting of the Washington County Board of Supervisors to order. And I'd ask Supervisor Clary to lead us in prayer, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Dear Father, we welcome the seasonal change into our longer days and warmer weather and the rebirth of the earth. Thank you for the normalcy and beauty of this time. Please guide our communities in their daily endeavors. Farms are actively preparing the ground for seed. People are raking their yards. Schools are opening up, and most are looking ahead with hopefulness. For others, they are grieving, they're anxious, and they're suffering from COVID or other health issues. And we stand with them, and we pray for their well-being. In your name, amen.
Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In case of fire or emergency, there's 3 exits to this room, there, and there. In case of such emergency, please proceed to the nearest stairway. Go down the stairway, clear the building, and keep as far away from the building as you can, so rescue squads or emergency squads can do their job. If you need assistance, please contact someone to help you out. For this meeting, please silence your cell phone. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor O'Brien. We will now do the roll call, please.
Mr. Hankey.
Here.
Mrs. Fedler.
Here.
Mr. Ferguson.
Here.
Mr. Shaw.
Here.
Mr. Hall.
Here.
Mr. Wilshaw.
Here.
Mr. Hicks.
Here.
Mr. Ward.
Here.
Mr. O'Brien.
Here.
Mr. Half.
Here.
Mr. Campbell. Mr. Skelly.
Here.
Mr. Hogan. Mr. Wilson.
Here.
Mrs. Clary.
Here.
Mr. Griffith.
Here.
Mr. Rozell.
Here.
And I believe we have a quorum.
Yes.
All right, we have our quorum. We will now have a special presentation, and I would ask the Chair of our Agricultural Committee, Supervisor Feller, would you do the introduction, please?
Sure. We're receiving the benefit of Lauren Chuda will be presenting us her speech that she'll be using in the sub-state competition. She is a member of the Greenwich Central FFA and attends Greenwich Central High School. So we wish her luck in her competition, and she will be presenting us her speech this morning.
Thank you, Supervisor Fedler. And it'll be coming up here shortly.
I always knew there was something special about the place I'm growing up. My friends would complain about living in an agricultural community, but I could never fully agree. I like the way I can get to know people better by connecting them to their family farm and how I'm a part of that network through my father's role in the dairy industry. I don't think there's anything like the unspoken circle I joined when I began showing jerseys at the county fair, and I love how neighbors are always there to check in on the construction of a new barn. I always knew there was something special about the place I'm growing up, but the more cities I visited and foreign cultures I encountered, the more negligible my little farm town seemed. If Madrid has centuries-old cathedrals, what are our little parish halls? If Montreal has avenues of authentic cuisines, what's our downtown village diner? My doubt in the significance of my community grew the more I saw of the outside world. But amongst this growing uncertainty, I held steadfast to the belief that there had to be something that made my little town significant in the scope of global culture. There had to be some reason why ag towns like mine were getaways for city dwellers and constantly romanticized in literature and film. I reflected upon my community and was able to find the answer I was looking for. A farm town cares for its residents, and not in the way of a trivial personification. The closed circle that separates residents like myself from urban facets provides a haven for personal growth and a system of support for the pursuit of individual aspirations. This support, I've discovered, is given indiscriminately and begins with the foundation of health. There is an evident lure to the idea of locally produced food. You can see it in everything, from the logo on your lettuce to the advertisement of your eggs, but there is evidence that reveals its true benefits. The apple grown in the nearby orchard is much more nutritious than the fruit flown in from Washington. This is because you as a consumer can get to it quicker. From the moment it's harvested, produce begins to lose its nutritional value, a degradation exacerbated by the artificial lighting and temperature changes of extended transportation. Because of this, those who live in agricultural communities have access to the most nutritious food there is, and therefore have an asset in combating disease and building healthier futures. Additionally, a recent CDC study revealed rural areas to have higher qualities of air as opposed to urban areas. The same study did reveal rural areas to have lower qualities of potable water, and various surveys, including one by Dordt University, have discovered lower associated statuses of mental health. But with a solid foundation provided by nutrition and clean air, residents have the means to address these problems and build healthier futures. The support given by ag communities extends into economic matters. The borders that define a farm town are not just a geographic encompassment, but a loose financial circle. The money spent within this area funds the entrepreneurship of neighbors, creating a cyclic flow of money and support that better enables residents to pursue their dreams. A recent article by the Brookings Institution illustrates the power of this complex. In emphasizing entrepreneurship, a small Virginian town was able to save itself from collapse, and so too is this nexus a savior for many communities and individuals across the nation. My mother's veterinary clinic prospers through the return of clientele from local florists and chefs. My father makes a point to purchase locally produced milk, and lots of it, from the same farms he works with as a pharmaceutical salesman. No matter your business aspiration, you have only to buy local to be assured that your expenditures will find a way of coming back around. This is an atypical, exceptional environment for the pursuit of dreams. As extraordinary as these health and economic benefits are, they're not all that grant ag communities their significance in the world. Technically, through policy and engineering, these factors could be replicated in urban areas. The historic sites of monarchs and centuries-old architecture can't be recreated, not truly. So what is the unreplicable characteristic of farm towns? What am I growing up surrounded by that only a tourist could see? Farm town support systems are bigger than health, bigger than the fulfillment of dreams. Agricultural communities are systems and networks of motivation and guidance that provide residents with guidance through life. There are a million examples I could try and incorporate to illustrate to you how this is true, but there's none better I could think of than my town's FFA chapter. In this organization, students like me are encouraged to test vital leadership and communication skills and are straightforwardly critiqued in order to grow. In this organization, neighbors and local alumni like you volunteer as judges, guiding and advising students like me so that we may become the best at whatever we may wish to become. In this organization, local parents and teachers step up and provide food and rides, binders, and official dress for students who may not have the means to discover their true potential otherwise. FFA is not the organization, it is the people who make it possible. A farm town is not the zip code, it is the residents who unconsciously work together to maintain the system of unbiased, unprejudiced support that makes it so unique. And agriculture is to be attributed. Whether it be growing green beans for a roadside stand or milking 800 head of cattle, the cultivation of food is an undertaking founded on the cooperation of individuals. The bonds that tie a plant science teacher to a poultry farmer and a tractor mechanic to a supermarket employee are complex, interwoven, and most importantly, interdependent. Perhaps, in farm towns like mine, residents are unable to flip the switch on helping out their neighbors, even in matters apart from their jobs. Perhaps this is the reason why my FFA advisor facilitates the cattle showing endeavors of kids outside of school, why a local feed mill sponsors the youth lacrosse program that keeps many of the town's students active, healthy, and happy. Perhaps this is why the farm town is notorious for its interconnectedness. Residents help each other out. We don't know how not to. Agriculture provides a substratum for community members to build our own system of support, our own means to become who we wish to become and help the next person do the same. That is unreplicable. Thank you.
Well, that was very heartwarming and very well done. And I will get a letter of thanks out on behalf of the Board of Supervisors. Did anyone have any comments they'd like to make regarding the speech?
I have it.
Supervisor Hack.
Sam, what town and FFA chapter is she from?
I believe it's the town of Jackson.
Thank you.
Yes, Cassie.
She's in the Greenwich FFA chapter. And a student at Greenwich High School.
But she's a resident of Jackson, correct? Am I wrong on that?
No, that's
yes,
correct.
Jenkins said yes. Okay. I apologize for that error on the chapter. Sue, you had your hand up.
I just wanted to clarify which school district, and what a great speech, and actually she nailed it on the head. Great job, great speech. Nice to have her represent us.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right. Then we move on to the condensed minutes. The condensed minutes from the March 19, 2021 meeting are accepted as mailed unless there are any additions or corrections. Does anyone have any additions or corrections that they would like to add to those? Seeing none, those are approved. Communications, Deborah.
Communications from Essex County, we are in receipt of their resolution number 91, opposing legislative agenda of certain Adirondack environmental groups seeking to decouple broadband and cellular expansion coverage in Essex County and the state. From Warren County, we are in receipt of their resolution number 95, urging the governor and legislature to increase support for community colleges. That's all I have for communications.
Very good, thank you. Any questions on communications? Then we'll move on to the COVID-19 update. Tim, are you available?
Good morning, everybody. Just put my presentation up here real quick. All right, so quick update. Obviously, we continue to keep everything updated on the website, washingtoncounty.ny.gov/coronavirus. Daily statistics, relative information regarding the vaccine distribution, our active cases by town, and then any changes or event registration is also on there. Also on there is the registration for the vaccine interest registry, which is where we're monitoring the homebounds through. So anybody in your communities, again, that are homebound and are still looking for vaccine, please encourage them to sign up on that. All of those events are blasted out first to our local officials and the vaccine interest registry. And then from there, whatever's left over, we're putting them out publicly for any of those that haven't signed up to the registry, just to make sure we're doing our best to fill every appointment we can. No changes in public health staffing right now. They're continuing their 7-day staffing due to workload. Cases still are coming in. Obviously, they're doing quarantines and monitoring. We're still using additional personnel for contact tracing and pod operations. And as you know, we're continuing to active case information as of last night, 381 in monitoring. So that's all of our quarantines, 88 active positive cases right now. And thankfully today, we're down to 2 hospitalized. Earlier this week, I think we were up to 4. And then just our active statistics by date since we started monitoring this graph back in May of last year. The blue are our active persons under monitoring. The red are the active positives at the time. So you have a good look at what we were actually doing on each of those Fridays, the hospitalizations active on that day, and then the deaths obviously are cumulative. And then our historical statistic chart, which we're just obviously continuing to go. The positives just continue to grow for the obvious point they won't come back down. And then the fluctuation in our persons under monitoring. And then the deaths again are cumulative. And then we have our hospitalizations, which obviously change based on the week. Vaccination update. So we're continuing to do those pods every week. The last couple of weeks we've been at the Hudson Falls High School. They were gracious enough to let us use the gym up there, which has been a good temporary location. There's still multiple ways to get vaccine if you're interested in vaccine. The state site in Queensbury, obviously our pod operations that we're doing every week. And then you've got your pharmacies and the healthcare providers that are out there. So we just want to make sure that everyone in our communities have all that information and the different outlets that are available for them. Certainly we encourage everyone who wants to be vaccinated to be vaccinated. And obviously it's getting easier and easier to be able to access that if you're looking to be vaccinated. The one thing, obviously, all of the sites now can vaccinate everybody. That was a change that came out last month. So there's no more restrictions as far as we can only vaccinate certain categories. The only thing that we're up against is with the Moderna, we can only vaccinate those 18 and over. The Pfizer is the only one still that has been approved for 16 and 17-year-olds. So there's that. Our vaccinations to date, we've administered a total of 6,714 shots at our pod events, which include the 100 homebound that we had done as of last week. And the EMS vaccination team is continuing to do some homebound. They've subbed out what we were using for the J&J for the Moderna for right now until everything comes back from the CDC and the FDA on being able to resume using the J&J right now. But the EMS vaccination team and the public health staff have continued to do an amazing job to make sure we're continuing to get vaccine out to those who want it. State statistic wise, as of this morning, we're up to 32.6% of our population has at least 1 dose of the vaccine. So certainly that's climbing. And then again, just a huge thank you. It takes quite a few people to run those pods. You know, the Hudson Falls School, again, have been very gracious. Their staff has more than helpful in getting us set up and getting into the gym and letting us use their space temporarily. That's been a big help to us while Burgoyne continues to undergo that work over there. Buildings and Grounds has been, great in helping us get everything trailered up there while we unload and set up. So certainly it continues to be a community effort between all of those groups that have helped us since day one, and we certainly couldn't do it without each and every one of them. Just testing operations for anybody who's looking for testing in our communities. The Warren County test site continues to be up and operational. That one requires an MD or a public health referral. The CVS pharmacies that have testing available, those are a drive up. You pick the envelope up, you do your self swab, you put it back in, that gets mailed out. So testing comes back 2 to 3 days. The healthcare providers, Hudson Headwaters at Moreau, Broad Street, West Mountain, and Warrensburg all have access to rapid tests if they're available. If not, PCR tests all the time. The SUNY Albany test site, and then certainly we know the Cambridge EMS test site that we're working with them down there. They've been absolute fantastic partners about getting people in and getting them tested, which has been a crucial need here for our communities in Washington County. So that's been a huge help, and they're continuing to do great work. And the last step, obviously, we know vaccine is only one step to ending this pandemic. So certainly we are still seeing people come to work or go out to gatherings not feeling well. and a couple of days later turning positive, which obviously just creates issues for everyone around. So certainly if you're not feeling well, please stay home. Be mindful of your activities as things start to pick up and gatherings start up again. You know, if they're not people that you live in your home with, you know, just make sure you keep your social distance, wear your mask. If you're going to gather with those that you know or that you're comfortable with. And certainly, obviously, if everybody's vaccinated, you know, there are those precautions as well. And just continue. Travel advisory is gone. So the only thing they're encouraging people not to travel. However, if you do travel, there are no quarantine requirements unless you're symptomatic. So other than that, I don't think I have anything else to add.
Okay, does anyone have any questions of Tim? Seeing none, thank you, Tim. Committee reports, the audit report, please.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move the audit committee report.
Supervisor Losaw moved the audit report. Do we have a second? Supervisor O'Brien, Supervisor Cleary, Supervisor Rozelle. Okay, is there any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Introduction of local law B of 2021, a local law naming Washington County an eligible area pursuant to Environmental Conservation Law Section 11-0935 and authorizing participation in the program allowing for certain hunting activities.
We're all set then.
We're all set then. Okay. On to proclamations. We have 3 proclamations that were issued on behalf of the board this past week. Proclaim April 5th through the 11th, 2021 as National Public Health Week. Proclaim April 11th through the 17th, 2021 as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. And proclaim April 18th through the 24th, 2021 as National Crime Victims' Rights Week. And all those employees that work into those separate agencies or divisions, we certainly appreciate all the hard work and effort they put in there. And this is a proclamation that they well deserve for all their efforts and their hard work. Does anyone have any comments regarding the proclamations? Seeing none, we will move on to supervisor's privilege of the floor. Does anyone have anyone that for supervisor's privilege of the floor? And no one's on the line, right, Sandy? Okay, no one's on the line. So we will now move on to introduction of resolutions. We need a motion to set aside the rules for resolutions number 94 through 96.
So moved.
Motion.
So moved by James Griffith. We have seconds, Darrell Wilson, Cassie Fedler, Bob Hankey, Supervisor Ward, and I don't see any others. Okay, is there any discussion? All in favor, I say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 94 by Supervisor Hall, titled to appoint budget officer. Resolved that Brian R. Campbell, Chair of the Finance Committee, be and he hereby is appointed budget officer at an annual salary of $36,383 effective May 29th, 2020. Resolution number 5 by Supervisor Hankey, titled to set public hearing on introductory local law B of 2021, entitled the local law naming Washington County an eligible area pursuant to Environmental Conservation Law Section 11-0935 and authorizing participation in the program allowing for certain hunting activities by persons 12 or 13 years of age. Resolved that a public hearing be held on May 21st, 2021 at 10:05 a.m. with regard to introductory local law B of 2021 entitled Local Law naming Washington County an eligible area pursuant to Environmental Conservation Law Section 11-0935 and authorizing participation in the program allowing for certain hunting activities by persons 12 or 13 years of age, and be it further resolved that the clerk of the Board of Supervisors hereby advertise this public hearing in the official county newspapers. Resolution number 96 by Supervisor Fedler, title authorizing Washington County's participation in the New York Septic System Replacement Fund Grant Program. Resolved that the Chairman of the Board of Supervisors is hereby authorized to execute those documents necessary to participate in the program in a form approved by the County Attorney.
Thank you, Deb. We will now move on to resolution number 74.
Resolution number 74 by Supervisors O'Brien, Rozell, Half, Hicks, Sedler, Ferguson, Losaw, titled to request abolishment of Good Friday closing hours for alcohol sales in Washington County.
Mr. Chairman, moving resolution number 74.
Moved by Supervisor O'Brien. Do we have seconds? Supervisor Henke, Supervisor Fedler, Supervisor Shaw, Supervisor Ward, Supervisor Clary, Supervisor Ferguson, Supervisor Rozell. Okay, did I miss anyone? I don't believe so. Is there any discussion? Supervisor Half.
This is for Roger. Do we have any other blue laws still out there, like you can't buy it before noon on a Sunday and things like that?
Here. So the short answer is, and the list that this came from that lists the general closing hours, this is the only special day that's set aside. So there are differing closing hours and sales hours for different days like Sundays and things like that. But there's none specific to a particular day. And all the other counties have those same sets of hours. They may differ slightly from county to county, because you'll remember we had a discussion about, Saratoga and Warren possibly changing their hours and whether we were going to go along or not. It never happened, but each county can pick to a certain, or not pick, but request to a certain extent. So we are not exactly uniform with the rest of the state, but this was the only special day that was out of a normal closing hours type legislation that we had.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 75 by Supervisors Clary, Campbell, Skelly, Ferguson, Ward, Wilson, titled to reappoint Commissioner, Department of Social Services.
Chairman, moving resolution number 75.
Moved by Supervisor Clary. Do we have any seconds?
Second.
Supervisor Rozell, Supervisor O'Brien, Supervisor Wilson, Supervisor Fedler, Supervisor Skelly, Supervisor Henke. And did I miss anyone? Supervisor Ferguson. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 76 by Supervisors Clary, Campbell, Skelly, Ferguson, Ward, Wilson, title appoint members to the Washington County Community Services Board.
Chairman, moving resolution number 76.
Moved by Supervisor Clary. Do we have seconds?
Second.
Supervisor Wilson, Supervisor Fedler, Supervisor Henke, Supervisor Rozell, Supervisor Ferguson, Supervisor O'Brien. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 77 by Supervisors Campbell, O'Brien, Hicks, Feathers, Kelly, Hogan, Clary, Rozell, Losaw, Ward. Title, amend 2021 sewer district budget to purchase the trailer.
Do we have a motion?
Moving resolution number 77.
Moved by Supervisor O'Brien. Second? Supervisor Henke, Supervisor Fedler, Supervisor Wilson, Supervisor Losaw, Supervisor Clary, Supervisor Rozell, Supervisor Ferguson. Is there any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 78 by Supervisors Campbell, O'Brien, Hicks, Fedler, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Rozell, Losaw, Ward. Title, amend sewer district number 2 budget for feasibility study.
Mr. Chairman, moving resolution number 78.
Moved by Supervisor O'Brien. Do we have a second? Supervisor Henke, Supervisor Losaw, Supervisor Fedler, Supervisor Wilson, Supervisor Clary, Supervisor Ferguson, Supervisor Rozell. Any discussion? All in favor, signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 79 by Supervisors Campbell, O'Brien, Hicks, Fedler, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Rozell, Losaw, Ward. Title, amend 2021 sewer district number 2 budget to carry over grant funds related to the Peter Street project.
Mr. Chairman, moving resolution number 79.
Moved by Supervisor O'Brien. Second, Supervisor Henke, Supervisor Fedler, Supervisor Losaw, Supervisor Clary, Supervisor Ferguson, Supervisor Ward. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 80 by Supervisors Campbell, O'Brien, Hicks, Fedler, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Rozell, Losall, Ward, title amend 2021 public safety budget to carry forward unspent emergency management performance grant.
Mr. Chairman, moving resolution number 80.
Moved by Supervisor O'Brien, second Supervisor Hanky, Supervisor Fendler, Supervisor Clary, Supervisor Losall, Supervisor Ward, Supervisor Ferguson. Is there any discussion? All in favor, signal saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 81 by Supervisors Campbell, O'Brien, Hicks, Fedler, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Rozell, Losall, Ward, title amend 2021 public safety budget to carry forward unspent emergency management performance grant supplemental award.
Mr. Chairman, moving resolution number 81.
Moved by Supervisor O'Brien, second please. Supervisor Ward, Supervisor Clary, Supervisor Ferguson, Supervisor Losall, Supervisor Fedler, Supervisor Hanky. Is there any discussion? All in favor, signal saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 82 by Supervisors Campbell, O'Brien, Hicks, Fedler, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Rozell, Losall, Ward, title amend the 2021 budget recognizing unspent funds, crisis COVID-19 funding.
Mr. Chairman, moving resolution number 82.
Moved by Supervisor O'Brien, seconded by Supervisor Hanky, Supervisor Fedler, Supervisor Clary, Supervisor Ferguson, Supervisor Rozell, Supervisor Ward. Is there any discussion? All in favor, signal saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 83 by Supervisors Campbell, O'Brien, Hicks, Fedler, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Rozell, Losall, Ward, title amend 2021 Youth Bureau budget for program specialists.
Mr. Chairman, moving resolution number 83.
Moved by Supervisor O'Brien, seconded by Supervisor Hanky, Supervisor Losall, Supervisor Fedler, Supervisor Clary, Supervisor Ward, Supervisor Ferguson. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 84 by Supervisors Campbell, O'Brien, Hicks, Fedler, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Rozell, Losall, Ward, title to amend real property tax services 2021 budget for unspent multi-jurisdictional revale project grant funds.
Mr. Chairman, moving resolution number 84.
Moved by Supervisor O'Brien. Second, please. Supervisor Losall, Supervisor Hanky, Supervisor Fedler, Supervisor Clary, Supervisor Ferguson, Supervisor Ward, Supervisor Rozell. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 85 by Supervisors Campbell, O'Brien, Hicks, Fedler, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Rozell, Losall, Ward, title to amend 2020 budget for additional COVID-19 expenses.
Mr. Chairman, moving resolution number 85.
Moved by Supervisor O'Brien. We have seconds. Supervisor Fedler, Supervisor Losall, Supervisor Clary, Supervisor Ferguson, Supervisor Ward. Did I miss anybody? Any discussion? All in favor, signal saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 86 by Supervisors Campbell, O'Brien, Hicks, Fedler, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Rozell, Losall, Ward, title to award various Department of Public Works bids.
Mr. Chairman, moving resolution number 86.
Moved by Supervisor O'Brien, seconded by Supervisor Hanky, Supervisor Fedler, Supervisor Wilson, Supervisor Skelly, Supervisor Clary, Supervisor Ward, Supervisor Ferguson. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 87 by Supervisors Campbell, O'Brien, Hicks, Fedler, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Rozell, Losall, Ward, title a resolution authorizing the implementation and funding in the first instance 100% of the federal aid and state Marshall program aid eligible costs of a transportation federal aid project and appropriating funds therefore Church Street Bridge.
Mr. Chairman, moving resolution number 87.
Moved by Supervisor O'Brien, seconded by Supervisor Ferguson, Supervisor Ward, Supervisor Clary, Supervisor Wilson, Supervisor Losall, Supervisor Fedler. Supervisor Skelly. Did I miss anyone? Supervisor Rozelle. John, did you have a question too, or was that just because I missed your discussion? Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 88 by Supervisors Campbell, O'Brien, Hicks, Feathers, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Rozelle, Losall, Ward, title to amend capital project number 127, Church Street Bridge number 2 for Marchicelli Supplemental Aid number 2.
Mr. Chairman, moving resolution number 88.
Moved by Supervisor O'Brien. Second, please. Supervisor Hanky, Supervisor Fendler, Supervisor Skelly. Supervisor Losaw, Supervisor Wilson, Supervisor Clary, Supervisor Ward, Supervisor Rozelle, Supervisor Ferguson. Is there any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 89 by Supervisors Campbell, O'Brien, Hicks, Feathers, Skelly, Clary, Rozelle, Losall, Ward, title to place title of Public Works Manager on the title by grade schedule and remove the title of Highway General Supervisor 3 and Deputy Superintendent of Public Works, Department of Public Works.
Mr. Chairman, moving resolution number 89.
Moved by Supervisor O'Brien. Do we have a second? Supervisor Hanky, Supervisor Skelly, Supervisor Fendler, Supervisor Losaw, Supervisor Shaw, Supervisor Clary, Supervisor Wilson, Supervisor Ferguson. Is there any discussion? Then we will move to a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hanky?
Yes.
Mrs. Sadler?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Losaw?
Yes.
Mr. Hicks?
No.
Mr. Ward?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Haff?
No.
Mr. Skelly?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Clary?
Yes.
Mr. Griffith?
Yes.
Mr. Rozelle?
Yes.
The resolution is adopted, 2,703 yes, 640 no, 917 absent. Resolution number 90 by Supervisors Campbell, O'Brien, Feathers, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Rozelle, Losall, Ward, title to place title of Secretary to the Superintendent on the title by grade schedule, adding to staffing pattern and amend budget.
Mr. Chairman, moving resolution number 90.
Moved by Supervisor O'Brien. Second, Supervisor Hanky, Supervisor Skelly, Supervisor Fendler, Supervisor Clary, Supervisor Ferguson, Supervisor Wilson. And I don't believe I missed anyone. Okay, is there any discussion? We will then move to a roll call vote, please.
I have discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry, David. Go ahead. I apologize.
I'm voting no on this resolution and the one previous because as we discussed in subcommittees, these additional staffing that are not funded through grants or anything, this needs to come through at budget time, not 3 months later at the end of the first quarter. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other further discussion? Then we move on to the roll call, please.
Mr. Hanky?
Yes.
Mrs. Sedler?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Losaw?
No.
Mr. Hicks?
No.
Mr. Ward?
No.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Haff?
No.
Mr. Skelly?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Clary?
Yes.
Mr. Griffith?
Yes.
Mr. Rozelle?
Yes.
The Resolution is defeated. 1,899 yes. 1,444 no. 917 absent.
Resolution number 91.
Resolution number 91 by Supervisors Campbell, O'Brien, Hicks, Feather, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Roselle, Losal, Ward, titled to approve health insurance renewal for plan year 2021-2022.
Mr. Chairman, moving resolution number 91.
Moved by Supervisor O'Brien. We have seconds, please. Supervisor Henke, Supervisor Ferguson, Supervisor Ward, Supervisor Clary, Supervisor Roselle. Did I miss anyone? Okay, is there any discussion? All in favor, say by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 92 by Supervisors Clary, Campbell, Skelly, Ferguson, Ward, Wilson, title proclaiming Washington County a Purple Heart County.
Chairman, moving resolution number 92, please.
Moved by Supervisor Clary. Do we have second? Supervisor Henke, Supervisor Ward, Supervisor Skelly, Supervisor Fedler, Supervisor Roselle, Supervisor Ferguson, Supervisor O'Brien. I don't think I missed anyone. Paul, do you have discussion or just?
I had an itchy eye.
Oh, no, okay. Sorry. Is there any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Oh, sorry, Dana. I really not trying to avoid you down there, just where it's located. Sorry.
Sure. We've never done this before. I think it's a very good idea. Directly related, the town of Hartford is going to resume our Memorial Day parade on Memorial Monday, May 31st. We didn't do it last year, and I invite everybody to come. It's a wonderful parade that we use to honor those that have fallen due to conflict, our military members. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 93 by Supervisors Campbell, O'Brien, Hicks, Feather, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Roselle, Ward, title to reject New York State mini bids for electric cars for DSS fleet.
Mr. Chairman, moving resolution number 93.
Moved by Supervisor O'Brien. Do we have a second? Supervisor Fedler, Supervisor Ferguson, Supervisor Roselle, Supervisor Henke. Is there any discussion? Supervisor Skelly.
Yes, Chairman. I'd like to propose an amendment to this to put out the bids per the specs that were sent out to the board. And I'd like to start the discussion if I get a second.
Do we have a second? Supervisor Henke, Supervisor Griffith. Discussion, please.
Brian asked me to make this amendment just because of the timeline that's looking at for kickbacks or rebates on the cars. The bids can go out, and if we get them back and don't like the hard numbers that we get, we can still refuse them when they're reviewed. But he was concerned that if we didn't start it now, we might get behind enough that we wouldn't be eligible for the funding that's out there. There's a limited amount on the kickback for the electric cars. But he wanted to get it going, have hard numbers to look at when the bids got back. So.
Supervisor Roselle.
I know Brian wants the bids back. Are we gonna have, this is all gonna be brought to committee, no matter what the bids come in as, and then we'll make the decisions after. Is that correct?
It looks like the bids, the request is for the bids to go out and then come back into committee once he gets the bids.
Yeah, the bids will have to be approved by the full board
Right.
in order to accept them.
But we'll go to committee and review this whole program before we accept any bids, correct?
Before you accept them, yes.
Yeah, I believe he's looking at finance. I'm not exactly sure the timeline. I think next month's finance. I'm not positive.
It should
Supervisor
go
Hicks.
to-
Oh, go ahead, John, I'm sorry. Finish up.
Shouldn't they either go to government ops or DPW before they go to finance?
Yeah, somebody got their hand up besides,
Sorry, it's
Melissa, do you want to comment on that, Melissa?
Only that I believe if the bids went out, I think we were looking at the 29th to have those back. So we would miss Public Works. Are you thinking government ops? Or finance?
We're not missing Public Works next month.
Yeah, we got DPW the next month. Supervisor Hicks?
Yeah, I'm opposed to this amendment, and I just want to give a few reasons why. First of all, the motion is a negative motion to deny the mini bid, and then we're amending something that we denying to do something positive and different. To me, that makes no sense. Second of all, this should be vetted through Public Works. This is a carpool issue. This should be sent back to Public Works for full discussion. I think I have a lot of questions. We haven't had any discussion. We haven't had any debate. We haven't been allowed to do anything about these bids. We got an email with a draft of what the bids are, but we haven't had a chance to discuss them at all as a DPW committee, which is, I think, where it belongs. We have a Public Works meeting in 10 days. Why don't we just wait 10 days, discuss this fully, vet it fully, and move the process along the way the process is supposed to go instead of jumping over 2 hurdles without having done our due diligence? To me, this isn't just let's amend a bid to see if the foreman's truck should have a V plow or a straight plow. At the risk of using a hyperbole, this is sort of a paradigm shift in how we're looking through the carpool for the future. This is a very big deal. This is a change in policy and procedure. This isn't just a minor change in a little bid. I think we have a way of doing things, and it's not a way of doing things quickly. It's a way of doing things properly. And if we put it into Public Works in 10 days, and they approve the bids to go out, then the bids to go out, and I don't see why it would be a tragedy if we miss those bids for the May finance meeting. We'll have them for the following month. The program is in effect. The money is in there. The state just extended the program through 2025. So we don't even know the details of that program, let alone the details of everything else that's involved here. I just think it's a mistake procedurally. I'm not against electric cars. I think we're probably going to head there. We have to discuss charging stations and all the details. This is a huge policy change for the county. Let's do it right. Let's not do it fast. Just my 2 cents.
Supervisor O'Brien?
So there's something in this resolution rejecting the bids. I have not heard anyone say that these electric cars or these specs were run by DSS. They're the ones that are going to be running these vehicles. They're going to be out on the road. Have we considered what their opinions are and how that would potentially affect the spec bids? Or are we just going to ignore the people going to be using the cars? So I think that, as opposed to DPW, the first stop should be DSS and talk to DSS about what their feelings are of electric cars, what the conditions they're going to be in the snow, ice. Yes, the main roads are mostly clear, but there's a lot of other roads out there that we don't travel on that they travel on with the civil service for their calls for DSS. So I think before we send the specs out, we should run these specs by DSS to make sure we're ordering the right thing. I know I have a hybrid car. I think we should look at hybrid cars too for other reasons, but I know as spec and coming out of the factory, that car was not a good in snow and ice. I'd put special tires on the car to make it good and nice. So I think we should think about these things and think about the conditions they're going to be driven in before we send out a set of specs. And that's why I'm going to vote no, because we haven't consulted DSS, the people going to be operating these cars. And I don't like ramming it through without consulting the people that are going to be driving the cars and their safety. So that's why it is. And second of all, how do we know that the rebates with the extension of the program, because you haven't seen that, maybe the rebates have changed, maybe they got more or less. So I don't know. I mean, electric cars with the budget is going to be the wave of the future, and I agree with that. But why don't we talk to the people that are going to drive them first? It's their safety.
Supervisor Hack?
Question for Roger, maybe. Roger, I don't understand where the fourth whereas says the finance committee reviewed the bids and decided not to purchase off the mini bids because the costs were too high. So if it's rejected, how do we even have a resolution at the Board of Supervisors meeting to reject something already rejected?
Only the board can accept or reject bids. That's why you have to have a resolution to reject it.
But if if it failed in subcommittee, how does it come here?
It was asked to be put in front of the full board because you need some kind of action. You can't reject it by non-action. So the finance committee's recommendation would have been either to accept or to reject. Their recommendation was to reject.
Okay, thank you.
That's why it came out as a rejection.
Treasurer Al, can you talk briefly about the rebate or the monies that may or may not be available and how we think that will play out?
Certainly, and I'll address one of Mr. O'Brien's concerns. I can confirm that the budget officer has been working with the DSS commissioner on this program, so they have been brought along for the ride. I can confirm that because I sat in at least one meeting with the commissioner and her staff. So if that eases his pain a little bit, I can confirm that. As far as the rebates go, Mr. Hicks is absolutely correct. During the budget process this year, this EV program has been extended to 2025. So the program's not going anywhere anytime soon. The only danger this board would encounter is they didn't increase the allotment. So the rebate that used to be $5,000 for a $500,000 pool is now $7,500 for the same $500,000 pool. So that's the only thing that I think the budget officer was trying to relay is once the money's gone, and you could do it again next year, or maybe you still want to do the program without the rebate because again, you're only on the hook for 25% of the cost. But honestly, it just passed the budget process. The budget empowered NYSERDA to run the program, and the NYSERDA specs aren't even out yet. So the chances of the money drying up in 1 month are probably slim to none, if I had to be completely honest with you. But I think that was the budget officer's concern is once that $500,000 is gone, it's gone. But I don't think another 30 days is a catastrophe.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any other discussion? Okay, so then I would call for a vote. Let's do a roll call on this, please, Steph, if you would.
Voting on the amendment.
Right?
On the amendment, correct.
Right.
Mr. Hanky?
Yes.
Mr. Spedler?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
No.
Mr. Lothar?
No.
Mr. Hicks?
No?
Mr. Ward?
No.
Mr. O'Brien?
No.
Mr. Hack?
No.
Mr. Skelly?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Clary?
Yes.
Mr. Griffith?
Yes.
Mr. Rotel?
Sorry, John, we couldn't hear you.
No.
No.
The amendment is defeated, 1,263 yes, 2,080 no, 917 absent.
now back to the original motion, which is 93, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And we had we just need to vote on that, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any further discussion? Dan?
Yeah, what actually are we voting on now since we defeated the amendment?
That the bids be rejected.
Okay, thank you.
Is that correct, Roger? Is that the way I read that before you vote?
Yes, you're voting that the mini bids be rejected. There will be, you need either to go out for new bids, you would need generally committee approval to go out to bid. And then if you do so, then you would need full board approval to either accept or reject the new bids. So as of now, you're rejecting the mini bid and no further bids will be issued pending an instruction from a committee to do so.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Then we will start. Supervisor Clary, sorry.
Just so that I'm clear, Roger, so that it could come back into, say, Human Services and Commissioner Tammy DeLorme could talk to us about their perception of electric cars since it's their rebate that we would use and their usage to be proposed.
Any
Have it
committee
start there?
whose subject matter it falls under could take up that issue. It probably spans several from carpools run by Public Works. DSS is going to be driving them and finance is going to be paying for them. So the subject could come up in one or all of those committees.
So we could start that process there.
Any place, any of the chairman of those committees or members would like to start it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Melissa.
I just wanted to add that I did speak to Commissioner DeLorme and she had spoken to the budget officer and he is in support, or I'm sorry, she is in support of the electric cars. So I don't know if that changes the direction, if it would go to Public Works or if you still would like it to go to Health and Human Services.
Thank you. Supervisor Feller, did I see your hand up or?
I guess I was just questioning back to the DPW meeting. I thought at the DPW meeting, the consensus was that we would be probably rejecting the bids at this meeting. And then Brian was to send us the new specs for what he was going to submit. And we were going to have time to review them and ask him if there was any questions or comments. And then they could be let out. So we would have the information back. I thought that was how the process was discussed at DPW to carry through. I don't have a problem rejecting the bids here, but I think the consensus was in the DPW meeting that once we'd seen the bids, if you had any changes or discussion, they could be released, but maybe we didn't make a formal resolution, so.
You didn't because you didn't see the specs. So my recollection of that, my recollection was the understanding was you were going to go out, but you didn't want to go out until you saw the specs. And so that would, rather than have the committee authorize it, we just have the board authorize it once everybody was comfortable with the specs. That amendment was the attempt to do that, and it was unsuccessful.
Supervisor O'Brien.
So I thought we were going to have a chance to discuss the specs, but just have them sent out and the person sending the specs out, not here to discuss them. I mean, that changes what we had talked about doing. So just my input, a little off topic, but.
Any further discussion? Supervisor Hatt.
This whole issue of the specs going out and everything else, isn't the budget officer kind of going into the field of the administrator? I'm not quite comfortable with the way this is all being done.
Supervisor Fedler?
We talked about that at DPW too. At one time, a couple years ago, where everybody was questioning the specs on the trucks that were being sent out and everybody wanted to see the specs. They were done that time because of the committee decided they wanted to see the specs. And it appears that in this case, people are challenging the purchase again, so they wanted to see the specs. It's not the first time it's been done.
Supervisor Rozelle?
I've got to say, I'm all mixed up on what we just voted on, what we're voted on now. I don't know what's going on.
Well, don't feel alone. So my next question was actually going to be to to Roger to tell us, explain one more time, what a yes vote on this means and what a no vote means on it.
So we're back to the original text of Resolution 93, which is rejecting the state mini bid that the purchasing office put out. So if you vote yes, we will reject those bids and go back to the drawing board on electric cars. If you vote no, we will accept the bids and purchase off the mini bid that was put out. It's kind of a backward way of doing it. A no vote is a yes to purchase and a yes vote is a no to purchase because of the way it's worded. I see Mr. Hicks smiling at the wordplay, but that in essence.
I'm smiling at Debbie's smile.
All right.
If you don't want to buy electric cars, vote yes.
Supervisor Kelly.
Just a final note before we vote. I want to check with everybody. Sounds like we're going to hammer this out in DPW. What does everybody need besides the specs of the vehicles? Because I want to either put this to bed or move forward one way or the other here. We're kicking the can down the road here and haven't had time to discuss it, as Matt said. What else? What does everybody need to bring? I mean, Brian's going to try and bring numbers. He was hoping for the bids just to have hard numbers, but that's all right. I just want to make sure we can discuss this. That's all.
Good point, Jay. Supervisor Haff. Dana?
I'd like to see a little more discussion on the charging stations. Is it a regular charging station where if you go into DMV and you plug in your car and you're there for half an hour and you come out, you only got a 1 mile increase in range? Or are they the super fast charging stations? I understand there's all kinds of charging stations. So we know very, very little about all of this.
All right, do we need Supervisor Hicks?
Well, Jay's asking, I'd like to know why we're not including 2022 models. Why are we only looking at 2020 and 2021s? And when it lists a few specific models or equivalent, who's going to make that determination? What's an equivalent? I don't know. I just don't feel like I'm well informed at this point. I will develop some more questions between now and then, Jay, but I just think we're going a little bit blind, that's all.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? Okay. Deb, can we do a roll call on this one too, please? So we know where we're at.
Sam?
Sue has a question.
Sue, you got a question?
Yeah, Jay, just to throw a cog into the wheel here. Probably in DPW, and they do some of the mechanics and repair of carpool. That would be my guess. I'm not sure on that. Is there a maintenance person there that is able to work on electric cars?
Good question.
Okay, so that's my question.
Supervisor Haff?
Thank you.
Sue, this was asked in DPW. I asked it, and the answer was they're under warranty. It would go back to the dealer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion before we vote? Hearing, seeing none, then we'll move ahead.
Mr. Hanky?
Yes.
Mrs. Fedler?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Losaw?
Yes.
Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Ward?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Haff?
Yes.
Mr. Skelly?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Clary?
Yes.
Mr. Griffith?
Yes.
Mr. Rozell?
yes,
The resolution is adopted, 3,343 yes, 917 absent.
Okay.
Resolution
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
number 94 by Supervisor Hall, title to appoint budget officer. Did you want to make the announcement before that?
Yes, I just wanted to, and I'm going to ask Roger to comment on this before we do so everybody is clear here on this. But according to the way that I understand this, was back when we did the appointment for the budget officer for Supervisor Campbell, that it was determined by the judge that the chair of the board should have appointed the finance chair prior to the vote. And traditionally, we have never done it that way. It has been whoever is the budget officer is the finance chair. So those were the standards that we had followed. However, this apparently changed, the way, different from the way we have done in the past. Is that correct, Roger?
In essence, the words that you see in this resolution in front of you that says, Brian Campbell, Chair of the Finance Committee, is appointed budget officer. The words Chair of the Finance Committee were not in the resolution appointing Mr. Campbell. Therefore, the judge was of the opinion that he was not eligible as being chairman of the Finance Committee, and the judge's opinion is a prerequisite to being appointed the budget officer. He was not eligible to be appointed budget officer, and he thus invalidated that resolution from last May 29th, was it? We are making that appointment effective again back to that date by using those words.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, Dana.
Roger, historically, Republicans and the Democrats, we all caucus and we discuss chair, vice chair, budget officer. So the budget officer will no longer be part of those caucuses or votes. Is that correct?
The budget officer is appointed, it can be appointed at any time, but traditionally the new term, I always use the word term, we got into that argument too. A budget officer is appointed each time a new board comes in. So next January, a new board will come in. Names will have to be proposed to occupy chairman, vice chairman, and budget officer. As you saw last year in 2020, when the new board came in, 2 different names were proposed. Each one of those resolutions would have the same wording, just with a different name in it. So you still would caucus, you still would decide which names were going to be put forward for the board to consider. So it won't change that process at all.
So the chairman could appoint a chairman of the finance committee and we could have an entirely different person as budget officer?
No, you can't. That's the point.
Okay.
I believe what the judge was saying is there was a drafting error in that appointment resolution because it left out the chair of the finance committee, because you have to be both of those things. You have to be the chair of the finance committee to be the budget officer. That was the ruling. Therefore, because that appointment wasn't in that resolution simultaneously, that's why the judge invalidated it.
Okay, so in the future, when we vote on the floor for the chairman and the vice chairman, that's it. There will no longer be a vote on the floor for the budget officer because he will have already been appointed as the finance chair by the chairman of the board.
No, the budget officer the budget officer is by default the treasurer, unless the board appoints somebody else. The board can appoint anybody else other than the treasurer if they so choose. However, if they appoint a supervisor, the law says, and I will read it to you directly so there's no miscommunication or confusion, no member of the Board of Supervisors may be appointed budget officer other than the chairman of the Board of Supervisors or the chairman of the committee of the Board of Supervisors designated or created to review the tentative budget.
I completely do not understand this. Thank you.
Supervisor O'Brien.
So the chair is the one that appoints the finance chair, correct?
In this case, in the future, the board will be the one appointing the finance chair, and that's what you're doing by virtue of this resolution. Because
So
otherwise, this is what we'd have. The chairman would announce before you voted for budget officer, I appoint Mr. Smith the budget officer. Then you would have a vote, and if you didn't appoint Mr. Smith, he could never be the budget officer. So then you'd have to say, Mr. Hall, would you appoint Mr. Jones? Like when we went back to, if we go back to the 20th, where we had both of those people. That's why this resolution is appointing the chairman of the committee and the budget officer at the same time. That way there's no confusion that the person's not qualified to hold that title. It's the same thing you've been doing since I've been here. It's just the midterm one I hate to use, I don't want to use the word term. The one from May 29th did not include comma, chairman of the finance committee, close comma. It just said Mr. Campbell is appointed the budget officer. And those are the words I believe that the judge seized on in making his ruling. So we're just correcting an error of leaving out those words to go back and implement the will of the board from that resolution. It won't change, it should not change anything that you've done in the past or choose to do in the future.
Supervisor Hanky.
And so in the future, the resolution will just say, we'll just include chair of the finance committee in the appointment resolution. If we had 2 or 3 or 9 candidates, each one of them would say, hereby appointed budget officer and chair of the finance committee.
And
That's the only difference, just a semantic difference in the resolution.
And the one that passes wins.
And the one that passes wins.
Correct. Which is what you've been doing.
Supervisor Haas.
But there will be a change because this will be the first time that the board votes for a chairman of a committee.
No, it will not. That has been the resolution going back to, I don't know, Debbie would have to tell us, but that traditionally in the beginning of a new board every year, that in essence, the board has chosen that chairman by dictating to the chairman of the board, has chosen the chairman of the finance committee by dictating to the chairman of the board by resolution who that will be. The board always rules.
It might even be in the rules of the board. Actually, thinking about it.
Yeah, we have to check those and see what's in the rules of the board, Bob.
I'd say move forward, but
Yeah. Okay.
It will not change anything about what you've done. Nor should that ruling change anything about what you've done.
Is it too late for me to be budget officer?
Not if you can get enough people to vote for you and get appointed the chairman of the finance committee.
When-
but you have to leave.
All right. Is there any other discussion? Supervisor Wilson?
Just a question for Roger. So according to the law, if the board fails to act, Al is our budget officer by default, correct?
Correct. The beginning of that sentence I read to you is very clear. Budget officer shall mean the chief fiscal officer, provided however, and then it tells you how to appoint other people. So you can appoint anybody. If you do nothing, you get the treasurer. If you can appoint somebody else other than the treasurer, but if it's a supervisor, that person has to fall into one of those 2 categories.
Not the first time I've been a consolation prize.
Supervisor O'Brien?
So in turn, that means if this motion fails, then by default, the treasurer is the budget officer.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Is there any further discussion? So we'll take a vote here. Let's do a roll call this one too, Deb. So we got everybody.
Mr. Hanky?
Yes.
Mrs. Spedler?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
He's got his hand up.
Looks like a yes.
Yeah, I got it on now, yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Losaw?
Yes.
Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Ward?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Haff?
Yes.
Mr. Skelly?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Clary?
Yes.
Mr. Griffith?
Yes.
Mr. Rosell?
You're not muted.
Yes.
The resolution is adopted, 3,343 yes, 917 absent.
Okay, thank you.
Resolution number 75 by Supervisor Hanky, titled to set public hearing on introductory local law B of 2021, entitled a local law naming Washington County an eligible area pursuant to Environmental Conservation Law, Section 11-0935, and authorizing participation in the program allowing for certain hunting activities by persons 12 or 13 years of age.
Mr. Chairman, moving resolution 95.
Moved by Supervisor Hanky. Do we have a second? Supervisor Fedler, Supervisor Griffith, Supervisor Rozell, Supervisor Hess, Supervisor Wilson, Supervisor Skelly, Supervisor Shaw, Supervisor Ward, Supervisor Ferguson. I think we have everyone. Is there any, Supervisor Hanky, discussion?
2 points of discussion on this. One, if he does not object, I'd like to add Supervisor Griffith to the support of this.
I do not object.
He and I started working on a resolution early on before the budget stuff really came out well. We determined it had to be a local law, so we did quite a lot of work on it. And I know he's taking quite a lot of pressure and heat down there, so I would like to add him to that if we could.
It's
if he doesn't object.
It's pleasant pressure and the heat, and I do not object.
Okay. Secondly, I would like to, I guess, apologize because this is the sort of process violation that we've debated so thoroughly here just a few minutes ago. Our intention was to take this to Ag and Planning, have a resolution come out of there, introduce local law, vet it all out, and go through committee and come out with a resolution. I would have to set a public hearing, then go another month. DEC threw a monkey wrench into this because they have a June 1st deadline for getting material in to produce their guide. And if we did not get this passed in time to give it to them before June 1st, Washington County would not appear in there, which means all our town clerks would get 5 million questions to have to field. And so we felt that it was important to, step this up a little bit and go a little bit further ahead. So we did kind of step around the committee process that still will be talked about in Ag and Planning. We'll vet it out. You have plenty of time to talk about it if you want, but just procedurally to make sure we got it onto the May board meeting, we had to do it this way. So I apologize for stepping over the committee a little bit, but we will bring it back and talk there.
Supervisor Hess?
Bob, what is meant by certain hunting activities? What are the certain things that, or maybe the shorter answer is what can they not do?
Big game. They cannot hunt bear. They cannot hunt alone. They have to have somebody that defines what accompaniment means, which has always been a problem, is you have to be there to be able to touch and talk to them. They have to wear blaze orange or blaze pink. And they cannot hunt from a tree stand.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 96 by Supervisor Fedler, titled authorizing Washington County's participation in the New York Septic System Replacement Fund Grant Program.
Mr. Chairman, moving resolution number 96.
Supervisor Fedler, do we have a second? Supervisor Hanky, Supervisor Clary, Supervisor Ward, Supervisor Wilson, Supervisor Ferguson, Supervisor Griffith. Okay. Discussion. Yes, Cassie.
I can make the same speech that Bob just did, sort of. We talked about this in committee a couple months ago, but at that time, they weren't sure DEC was going to receive funding. They have informed us via a public news release without contacting us first that the program is funded. We do have a contract now, but we're running it through the board meeting today because the contract needs to be signed by the 20th. So if there's any other questions, hopefully I can field them, but that's the reason why we're coming through the board meeting today as opposed to committee.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Dana.
Cassie, this mentions Lake George and Casa Una, but what about Lake Champlain?
They're not included. The program in our county down in the regs from DEC specifically named Casa Una and Lake George.
But isn't there a need on Lake Champlain?
There may well be, but the DEC didn't choose to fund the program for folks located on that lake.
All right, thank you.
Any further discussion? Then all in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right. Supervisor comments. Do we have any supervisor comments today? Supervisor Rozelle.
Yes, I'd like to, probably everybody knows that we lost a citizen here in Whitehall, John Millett Senior, and he affected a lot of people in his career as coach and everything. And I just wanted to make it noticed, and he was highly respected, and he taught respect also along with coaching. He coached me back 40 years ago. Learned a lot more than football under that man, and I think he's got it to the community, Washington County, and right to the whole region with his coaching career. Thank you.
Hey, John. Dana? Supervisor?
At one time, John was the assessor for the town of Hartford also.
Yes, he was the assessor for Whitehall, plus he was big in the Republican Committee here in Whitehall, and he was a well-respected man.
He touched a lot of lives, John. He sure did. Yes, Sue?
I want to bring up Howard Fifield, who passed away here in Salem. He's like a Renaissance man here in Salem and has been like generational. And he's been taking care of the kids, you know, whether it's through the Salem Fire Department or the community or at sports or on the clock, the time clocks at school. He's always been around. And so I know Salem and the surrounding communities will miss him. And we thank him and his family for just years and years of service. So.
Thank you, Sue.
Yeah.
Any other supervisors had comments? Supervisor O'Brien?
I don't know if people saw it, but there was another terrible tragedy in Indianapolis where several people were killed and a lot more wounded in Indianapolis. I think we should remember those people and prayers, and you give your own prayers to the families involved. And it's certainly a tragedy that we have those situations happen.
Thank you, Dave. Any other supervisors' comments? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Sue Clary. Seconds we got Cassie and Don Ward. We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Be safe.
Mr. Hankey, you didn't have anything.